Science versus religion. So let's talk about that. I've talked about this a little bit in the past, but I want to get into it in a more detailed sense today. And actually, as you guys know, I am reading, almost finished with The Case for Christ by Lee Strobel. Great book, highly recommend it. It attacks the difficult questions that most, typically people that don't believe in the Bible, believe in Jesus or God, atheists, agnostics will bring to the table in order to discredit the idea that there is a God. Now, in this, and obviously credit to Lee Strobel, and he was talking about James Tour. All right, now James Tour, you need to understand who this is. James Tour isn't some, Christian scientist. All right, he wasn't handpicked that he was going to say the right things. He is one of the most respected scientists on the planet, world-class synthetic organic chemist. All right, it's a mouthful, but he's a leading figure in nanotechnology. He has over 700 research publications, more than 200 patents, and he's been named in the top 50 of the most influential scientists in the world. All right, so he helped develop nano cars, like literal molecule machines, right? That's what he does. He examines the molecules to find real world applications, creating machinery and mechanisms and things like that. Literally has received some of the highest rewards in chemistry and materials science that you can receive. Right? So this isn't some just run-of-the-mill Christian scientist. He is the best of the best. He's the one that makes his resume makes us look like we are as dumb as rocks, right? We've been asleep for 20 years, you know? So when he says something about science, people listen, not just Christians. People listen because he is the elite. And here's what he says. All right, I want to quote him. He says, I stand in awe because of what he has done. He is standing in awe of God, all right, because of what he, capital H, has done through his creation. Only a rookie who knows nothing about science would say science takes away from faith. If you really study science, it will bring you closer to God. Now, as someone myself who, I went through and I've spoke about this in the past, I struggled with, do I just believe what I believe because my parents said so? Or, I grew up in America, which is mostly Christian, right? Or is there really good evidence for this? So these words, they hit hard because there's this idea floating around that, well, especially among like materialists, not materialistic people, people that believe in just the materials, right? Is we come from materials, everything's materials, chemicals. That if you believe in God, you must be anti-science. You can't believe in God and believe in science, right? It's a funny. I love this movie, Nacho Libre, right, with Jack Black. His little companion says, "I believe in science," right? And he says it kind of funny, but that's a very common thing to say, right? And they make you think that faith is just for the educated. I mean, I'm sorry, faith is just for the uneducated. I'm sorry, I had that wrong. Faith is just for the uneducated. That if you're educated, you don't believe in religion, you don't believe in God, you believe in science. But that's not how it works. Honestly, this attitude isn't just arrogant, it's uninformed. They're the ones who are uneducated on the matter. James Tour is not a lightweight. He's not a beginner. He's not some sentimental believer who's clinging to this wishful thinking that there's a God. He's standing at the top of, to give you an analogy, like this scientific mountain, looking down at all the rest of us because he knows way more than we do. And he's saying, the deeper I go into the details of creation, the more obvious God becomes. How awesome is that? How eye-opening is that? So the irony is the people that mock Christians for believing in God, saying, "Oh, you're outdated, you believe in fairy tales, blah blah blah." The ones who say science has made faith obsolete, they're usually the ones not actually studying the science, right? Let that sink in. They're the ones reading popular headlines, you know, seeing these little 15-second Instagram reels And then they go out and repeat them because it sounds good and it fits their worldview. It fits what they want to do. Now, I'm not saying that's everyone, but that's a lot of them. They're not digging into the complexity, the fine tuning, the chemistry, the information content in the DNA. The most simple single cell amoeba that we know of has enough complex, ordered information inside of it to fill 1,000 Encyclopedia Britannicas. If you walk into the beach and you see some message written in the sand that says, Mary loves John, you know somebody wrote that. It didn't just happen because the waves washed it up that way. You can look at 1,000 encyclopedias full of ordered information, and you're not going to think that somebody wrote that. That's crazy. That's ludicrous. It's unbelievable precision in biological chemistry. All right. So the universe, it looks designed. Now, sound bites from that you're going to hear these people repeat a lot, they don't make you an expert. Just because you see something written or just because something sounds good to you doesn't make it true. You have to investigate it. I do just as you do, right? The problem isn't evidence. It's presupposition. Most atheists, not all, I'm not saying, but most atheists assume without proof that natural explanations were the only possible explanation. But when they start actually investigating the science, the cosmology, the the physics, the origin of life, the complexity of the cell, they run into the same thing that James Tour, top of the game, sees every single day. Like I said, the universe looks designed. DNA looks written. Where there's a program, there's usually there's always a programmer. And the deeper you go, the more intentional it appears. So James Tour's point is very simple. If you really know science, not just the surface level stuff, but the hard, technical, detailed work, you don't walk away from it thinking that it came from nothing without any kind of cause, any kind of design, or that life assembled itself from non-living chemicals by bumping into each other, accident, time, and chance. You don't believe that. You walk away stunned by this complex brilliance that is woven into every single molecule into our bodies or any creature. Materialists, they like to act like Christians believe in these fairy tales. But the truth is, some of the greatest scientific minds in history and today, Newton, Kepler, Faraday, I used to love him, or Michael Faraday, he was one of my heroes. Pasteur, James Clerk Maxwell, Francis Collins, John Lennox, and James Tour, they believe in science and faith, and they fit them together they believe they fit together very perfectly. Not because they turned off their brains and have some preconceived notion that, well, there's no naturalistic explanation, there's just God, and so it all has to fit that way. That's what you see. They used their brains. So when James Tour says only a rookie thinks science kills faith, he's not being insulting. And I'm not here to insult anyone. He's being honest. He's saying, if you've really done the work, if you've really looked into the evidence, it points to a creator. And that's exactly what I found after I did all my research as well when I was struggling with that. Do I believe this because my parents believed it, or is there really evidence for this? And what I found was overwhelming. Yes, beyond a reasonable doubt. It's just, if you think about it logically, it just makes sense. Science didn't pull me away from God. It pushed me right to him. So, hope this enlightens you a little bit. God bless. Thanks for watching as always, and I will see you back next time.